Welcome. Tonight, we're diving into the murky world of corruption. It's a global problem, but measuring it isn't straightforward. You can't just slap a corruption-o-meter on a country. Instead, we rely on perception global opinion polls, asking experts and business people how corrupt a country. These rankings are more educated guesswork than hard science, which is why different organizations produce different lists. Tonight, we'll compare these lists, see who tops them, and explore why perceptions can be so wildly different. And yes, we'll use claymation because sometimes only lumpy figures can make sense of this mess. According to Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index, Somalia holds the dubious title of Most Corrupt. Year after year, it sits at the very bottom of the global rankings, a position no country wants to claim. This isn't just a statistic, it's a reflection of daily life for millions. Decades of civil war and conflict have shattered Somalia's institutions, leaving a power vacuum where corruption thrives. The scars of violence are visible everywhere, from ruined buildings to fractured communities. With no stable government or reliable police, bribery and embezzlement become the norm. Law enforcement is often absent, and those in power are rarely held accountable. Public resources vanish and basic services often require bribes to access. For ordinary Somalis, even getting clean water or paperwork can mean paying off officials. Clan-based politics and warlordism flourish, turning government positions into prizes for personal gain. Power is fragmented and loyalty is often bought rather than earned. The impact reaches the next generation. Children grow up witnessing corruption as a fact of life, and schools suffer from lack of funding and resources. Oversight mechanisms are weak, independent media and watchdogs are rare, and speaking out is dangerous. Journalists and activists risk their lives to expose wrongdoing, but threats and intimidation are common. The perception of Somalia as a failed state deters investment, fueling a vicious cycle of poverty and corruption. Without outside support, rebuilding becomes even harder. For the CPI's surveyed experts, Somalia's reputation is hard to shake. The label of most corrupt sticks, making reform an uphill battle. While many Somalis work for change, the country remains stuck at the bottom. Activists, reformers, and everyday citizens push for progress. But the obstacles are immense. It's a stark example of how conflict and institutional collapse create fertile ground for corruption. When the roots of corruption run deep, rebuilding trust is a monumental task. The tragedy is national, and the cycle is hard to break. Each attempt at reform faces resistance from those who benefit from the status quo. In our claymation world, it's a landscape of missing aid and shadowy deals. International assistance often disappears before reaching those in need, lost to corruption's maze. Somalia's story is a warning. When the state fails, corruption becomes the system. The consequences ripple through every part of society. And so, Somalia remains the reigning champion of this unfortunate. Next up is Syria, a country whose recent history is marked by conflict, hardship, and a deeply entrenched system of corruption. Here, corruption isn't just a side effect of war. It's become a weapon wielded by those in power, shaping every aspect of daily life. The Assad regime has elevated kleptocracy to an art form, using control over humanitarian aid and smuggling networks to reward loyalists and punish dissenters. With no independent media or meaningful oversight, the state operates in near-total secrecy, silencing those who dare to speak out. The devastation of war has fueled sprawling black markets, where bribes and survival taxes are the price of getting by, and every transaction is a reminder of the system's grip. International sanctions, meant to pressure the regime, have instead empowered war profiteers tied to those in power, who now control the flow of goods and amass staggering fortunes. International experts describe Syria as a textbook case of state capture, where the ruling elite systematically loot the nation's wealth while ordinary people suffer. State institutions aren't just weak or dysfunctional. They've been transformed into tools for theft, repression, and the enrichment of a select few. For those at the top, the system works exactly as intended, rewarding loyalty and punishing opposition, all while the country crumbles. Syria's civil war has enabled looting on an industrial scale, creating a permanent class of profiteers who thrive amid destruction. For ordinary Syrians, corruption is a daily burden, an exhausting, relentless obstacle that shapes every interaction and decision. In this claymation world, bombed-out buildings and endless lines for basics are the backdrop to a struggle for survival that never seems to end. Syria stands as a stark example of how conflict and corruption can entrench a powerful elite, devastate a nation, and leave its people trapped in a cycle of hardship and fear. South Sudan, the world's youngest country, quickly became one of the most corrupt. Oil wealth, instead of building the nation, became a source of fierce competition and massive theft. Oversight institutions are fragile, unable to challenge powerful leaders. Civil war has militarized society, turning government contracts into vehicles for embezzlement. The elite live in luxury while most citizens face poverty and food insecurity. This inequality fuels ongoing conflict as groups fight for control of resources. International hopes have faded, replaced by frustration at the lack of rule of law. The perception of South Sudan as a plundered state scares off investment, trapping it in a cycle of dependency. In Claymation, leaders swim in oil while citizens are left with dust. South Sudan's tragedy, a nation rich in resources but crippled by corruption. It's a cautionary tale of how quickly hope can be lost. If you found this story eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more Claymation journeys into the world's most pressing issues. Venezuela, once prosperous, is now synonymous with crisis and corruption. Oil wealth was used to buy loyalty, but with no transparency, it became a source of massive graft. Economic collapse brought hyperinflation and shortages, making corruption a daily reality. Officials profit from black markets, while the military controls borders and bribes flow freely. The Maduro government dismantled democratic checks, jailing opponents and silencing dissent. Corruption isn't a few bad apples. It's seen as the system itself. International investigations reveal billions siphoned from state coffers. For outsiders, Venezuela is a pariah. Contracts are meaningless, and risk is everywhere. It's a warning of how populism, authoritarianism, and oil can create a perfect storm of disaster. In Claymation, it's a country drowning in petrodollars and empty shelves. Venezuela's fall shows how quickly wealth can turn to ruin. The lesson: unchecked power and oil money are a dangerous mix. Let's switch perspectives. U.S. News and World Report's global survey names Russia as the most corrupt. This isn't just another ranking. It's a reflection of how the world sees Russia through a different lens, one shaped by current events and the stories that dominate international headlines. Unlike the CPI, this ranking reflects global public opinion, shaped by headlines and geopolitics. It's less about data and more about the collective gut feeling of people worldwide, influenced by what they read, watch, and hear. Russia's high-profile scandals, Olympic doping, dissident poisonings, the invasion of Ukraine, fuel its reputation. These stories are impossible to ignore, and they stick in the public imagination, painting a vivid picture of a country mired in controversy. Under Putin, power is concentrated among loyalists and oligarchs, creating a system of state capture. The lines between government and personal wealth blur, and the elite thrive while ordinary citizens are left out. Institutions serve the elite, not the public, and anti-corruption activists face severe risks. Speaking out can mean exile, imprisonment, or worse, making the fight for transparency a dangerous game. Russia's actions abroad, disinformation, election interference, reinforce the image of a state that plays by its own rules. These tactics aren't just local, they ripple across borders, shaping perceptions far beyond Russia itself. For the global public, Russia's corruption is about both internal kleptocracy and external defiance. It's a story of power projected outward, with money and influence crossing continents. The perception is shaped by spectacle as much as substance. Scandals become global theater, and Russia is cast as the villain in a drama watched by millions. When asked to name a corrupt country, Russia's global profile puts it top of mind. Its actions and the stories told about them make it a symbol of corruption for many. It's a reminder. Perception is shaped by what makes headlines, not just what happens behind closed doors. The world's view is filtered through the stories that get the most attention. Different lists, different villains. Methodology matters. How we measure and who we ask can change the story entirely, shifting the spotlight from one country to another. Russia's story is as much about image as reality. In the end, the world's perception is a blend of fact, myth, and the power of a headline. Iran ranks just behind Russia in the U.S. News survey, driven by geopolitics and reputation. Real power lies with the supreme leader and the IRGC, a military-industrial giant with vast economic interests. This concentration of power creates classic conditions for perceived corruption. Iran's global image is shaped by its nuclear program, confrontational foreign policy, and strict internal controls. Sanctions have fostered black markets and opportunities for those with state connections. Internally, cronyism and elite privilege are common complaints. The world sees a secretive, defiant state run for the few. Iran's high ranking is less about daily bribery, more about a gut feeling of opacity and defiance. Colombia's place on the U.S. News list shows how reputation lingers. Decades of drug cartels and civil conflict created a powerful narrative of corruption. Even as Colombia has reformed, the global public still associates it with narco-trafficking. Corruption remains, especially at local levels, but robust institutions and a free press fight back. Ironically, the visibility of this fight can reinforce the perception of corruption. News of scandals signals both a problem and a functioning democracy. Colombia's challenge changing perception is harder than changing reality. In Claymation, the ghosts of the past haunt every reform. Reputation is sticky, and progress takes time to be recognized. Colombia's story is a lesson in the power and inertia of global perception. So what have we learned? Naming the most corrupt country is flawed. These lists measure perception, not hard data. A country can be seen as corrupt due to collapsed institutions or global notoriety. Still, these rankings highlight where the rule of law is in peril and pressure governments to act. As viewers, we must ask, who's being surveyed and what kind of corruption is being measured? Corruption is complex, driven by poverty, conflict, greed, and weak accountability. The causes differ from place to place. What do you think drives corruption worldwide? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Understanding the problem is the first step to solving it. If you enjoyed this claymation journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more fascinating videos. Goodbye and thank you.